Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fridays with Father. Father Gary here on Friday, December 31st, New Year's Eve day. It's good to be with you as we conclude this year of 2021 and look forward to 2022. Tomorrow we celebrate in the church's calendar the octave of Christmas, that is the eighth day. This last week, we have been celebrating every day as if it were Christmas Day. That's how we liturgically unpack this incredible story of God coming among us as a human being. It is also the day where we celebrate Mary as the Mother of God. And then finally, thirdly, it is a day in which the church recognizes the need for peace. And so this is the 55th year where we celebrate this World Day of Peace. And traditionally on these days, January 1st, the Holy Father gives us a message, and he has released that message. And I'd like to share a little bit of that with you today. The message this year is entitled Dialogue Between Generations, Education and Work, Tools for Building Lasting Peace. The Pope quotes from the book of the prophet Isaiah to begin, and then he reflects on how these days, as in the days of the prophets of old, so in our own day the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth constantly make themselves heard, pleading for justice and peace. The Pope's point there is, just as in the days of Isaiah, pleading for justice and peace, so too today we cry out, pleading for justice and peace. The Pope writes, in every age, peace is both a gift from on high and the fruit of a shared commitment, which is really going to be the focus of his message, that shared commitment. All can work together to build a more peaceful world, starting from the hearts of individuals and relationships in the family, then within society and with the environment, and all the way up to relationships between peoples and nations. The Pope's point here is that sometimes we can feel helpless around being able to build a world of peace. He is saying, well, it starts right in our families and between generations. 3 paths for building peace is what he would like to propose. First, as I said at the beginning, dialogue between generations as the basis for the realization of this peace. Second, education as a factor of freedom and responsibility and development in our world. And then finally, labor as a means for the full realization of human dignity. The Pope writes, in a world still gripped by the pandemic that has created untold problems, some people attempt to flee from reality, taking refuge in their own little world. Others react to it with destructive violence. Yet, between selfish indifference and violent protest, there is always another possible option, that of dialogue between generations. Promoting such dialogue, the Pope says, between generations involves breaking up the hard and barren soil of conflict and indifference in order to sow the seeds of a lasting and a shared peace. He goes on to say, young people need the wisdom and the experience of the elderly, while those who are older need the support, affection, creativity, and dynamism of the young. There the Pope builds a beautiful vision of the mutual need and advantage that each generation has by relying on the other. And then he says, we need only think of care of our common home. The environment, in fact, is on loan to each generation, which must then hand it on to the next. And then he goes on to talk about how education, his second point, is so key, and the grammar for dialogue between generations. He notes that there's been a significant reduction in worldwide funding for education over recent years, while at the same time, military expenditures have increased beyond the levels at the end of the Cold War, and they seem certain to grow even more. He writes, "It is high time, then, that governments develop economic policies aimed at inverting the proportion of public funds spent on education and on weaponry." As is often the case when the Pope speaks or writes, he gives us a great challenge there. He also says that it is his hope that investment in education will also be accompanied by greater efforts to promote what he calls the culture of care, which in the face of social divisions and unresponsive institutions could become a common language working to break down barriers and build bridges. By investing in education and training of younger generations, the Pope says we can help them through a focused program of formation to take their rightful place in the labor market. And so then he goes on to talk about how key labor is, the dignity of work. Because labor, work, he says, is an expression of ourselves and our gifts, but also of our commitment, self-investment, and cooperation with others, since we always work with or for someone. He notes that in a particular way, the impact of the pandemic on the informal economy has been great. That informal economy often involves, he notes, immigrant workers, migrant workers, and that has been devastating to them. It is as though they don't exist whenever there's a conversation about what we need to do to build up the economy and recover from the pandemic. The Pope notes that migrant workers are often completely left out of the conversation as if they don't exist. But as we know from our own state of Washington, without migrant workers to work in our fields, we wouldn't have the food that we have in our stores and brought to our tables. Currently, he notes, only 1/3 of the world's population of working age enjoys a system of social protection or benefit from it only in limited ways. The answer to this is an expansion of dignified employment opportunities. Work is a necessity, he says, part of the meaning of life on this earth, a path to growth, human development, and personal fulfillment. It is more urgent than ever to promote throughout our world, decent and dignified working conditions oriented to the common good and to the safeguarding of creation. And here, and this is interesting, because so often we think in our country in particular, but also throughout the world in this day of heightened rhetoric, that politics is a terrible thing. But here the Pope says politics is called to play an active role by promoting a fair balance between economic freedom and social justice. And again, here the Pope strikes the balance that Catholic thought has always struck, which is there has to be this balance between economic freedom, yes, economic freedom, and social justice. That it's not one or the other, but it's both. It's both working together to create a just world of economic freedom. Let me conclude with the Pope's two concluding paragraphs. Dear brothers and sisters, As we seek to combine our efforts in order to emerge from the pandemic, I renew my thanks to all those who continue to work with generosity and responsibility in the areas of education, safety and protection of rights, in supplying medical care, in facilitating meetings between family members and the sick, and in providing economic support to the needy and those who have lost their jobs. I continue to remember the victims and their families in my prayers, the Pope says. To government leaders and to all those charged with political and social responsibilities, to priests and pastoral workers, and to all men and women of goodwill, I make this appeal. Let us walk together with courage and creativity on the path of intergenerational dialogue, education, and work. May more and more men and women strive daily with quiet humility and courage to be artisans of peace, and may they be ever inspired and accompanied by the blessings of the God of peace. It's a wonderful message from Pope Francis as we begin this new year of 2022. We're going to celebrate our Mass tomorrow for the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, at 10 a.m. It'll be a bilingual Mass. It is a holy day, but because it falls on a Saturday this year, it's not obligatory. So it's not a holy day of obligation, but it is a holy day. And I encourage you to come and celebrate Mass with us. I can't imagine a better way for us to begin the new year than to come together as a community of faith and to celebrate Mass together. So Mass is at 10 a.m. Tomorrow on Saturday. And then our regular Sunday schedule for the Solemnity of the Epiphany of the Lord on January 2nd. So Sunday in our regular Mass schedule, 9 a.m., 11:30 a.m. in Spanish, and 5 p.m. I also want to take this opportunity to note that the person behind the camera these years, both for Fridays with Father and behind the camera that you see on our live stream, Barbara Allen is retiring. Today, actually, is her last official day of work as she retires at the end of this calendar year. So, Barbara, thank you from all of us, from me, for these more than 12 years of service with us. Just in an amazing way, Barbara has taken on so many different roles while she's been here, but always this role of communications, which she has had the last several years, has really been her specialty, even when it wasn't her title. So Barbara, we wish you all the best in your retirement. Thank you for these years of service. God bless everyone. We'll see you this weekend.